I'm Fil Arenas, and I'm from Maxwell Air Force Base. I'm on faculty out there in the leadership track, and my job is to train Air Force officers, company grade officers, into much more effective leaders. So we have an 8-week program there in residence that I have a little hand in. And one of the things we want to do is make the lessons a little more immersive, a little more engaging for our students. So I'll just, well, let me introduce the rest of the group here. This is Alice Hayden, the president of H2IT, and Patrick Hayden, vice president of H2IT. And what we wanted to do today was share our journey together. I'm government, represent government, and they represent industry. So we had an idea to take some of our lessons and turn them into immersive, engaging 3D type exercises. And obviously we had to contract someone to get that expertise because we don't always have that in our organizations, correct? So it was just a very successful year. We started in 2012, and we actually went, what we're going to share are the 17 multiplayer educational role-playing games that we have developed over the last 12 months. First of all, we get our direction from, I get my direction from our Commander of Air Education and Training Command, General Rice, and he's constantly pushing innovation and challenging us to use fresh ideas and fresh approaches for our leadership. So we try to incorporate that within our curriculum as much as possible. And at Squadron Officer College, if I slip and say SOC, I'm referring to Squadron Officer College, and we're located in Montgomery, Alabama, at Maxwell Air Force Base. Have you guys been there? Yeah. All right. Come by anytime. But our quest is to push critical thinking while using innovation at the same time, and some people call that design thinking. So that's kind of our mantra. This is a shot of our campus. It's the Second Life campus that we had developed back in 2011, and we basically hosted a lot of global learning forums there, lunch and learns. We've spent how many meetings there from Orlando to Alabama? No, I mean our sessions.
Yeah, in world.
In world, we probably saved millions of dollars in TDY funds. Her whole team and I would meet on that campus in one of the development rooms that we have every other week for almost 18 months. So it's a great place for that, but we use it for prototyping and trying out different lessons. Just a quick evolution of how we got to where we are now. In 2009, we started working with the Carly Corporation, and one of the program managers is here today, Vanessa. Thanks for coming. And we first got into the avatar business because we saw there was a lot of cool stuff out there, and our students, if you don't realize, the CGO is they vary in age because we get a lot of prior enlisted students, but the average officer age is 34 in the Air Force. And so we get a little bit of from 30 to 40 range. Actually, we get some in their late 20s. So there's quite a range. But this particular Generation X and Y that we're tapping into, they're very technology savvy, as we all know. So the old 12 o'clock high videos that we had in our lessons just weren't getting it anymore. And some of the old guys remember, these are what we were brought up on. They just don't get that. You know, they need something a little more immersive. That's one idea. We can convert a 12 o'clock high video into a 3D environment. So we needed to engage them more. So these first and second generation avatar vignettes were basically flash-based. And we started out the first one with multiple choice type questions at the end to engage the learners a little bit and give them some feedback, because that's important. Since we were using these for distance learning, we have 5,000 or 6,000 students in our SOS distance learning program, Squadron Officer School. And they're on their own without facilitation. It's all self-directed. So you can't just put something out there that's nifty that has some information without providing some sort of feedback. From the educator side, that's a foul. You need to give them some kind of feedback. So we had like a multiple choice slide or a test for them to take that would provide the correct answers, but give them an opportunity to miss a few and hopefully learn in the process. Very rudimentary, but that's how we started the whole thing. And then of course we got a little more technical the next year with scenario-based assessments. So we started using decision trees and giving them more choices, taking them down different paths. And in the military, that's really easy to do, and it's the way we do a lot of our training anyway. So as I said, 2011 we got into the second life. In 2012 is when we started working with H2IT, and I tell people that, how many educators in here? How many programmers? How many ISDs? How many other? It's not a lot of others, right? Okay, it's typically, I presented here last year, and it was a third educators and a third developers, and about a third mixed bag of ISDs and different technical people. But I always say there's a delicate dance between those people, because a lot of the educators, they can't put this stuff together on their own. I mean, I don't know how to script and code and all that stuff. I mean, it'd probably take me a lifetime to do what these guys do, so we have to contract these experts. But by themselves, they can't figure out how to bring my lesson plans to life because they don't know anything about my topic. They don't know what my learning objectives are. They don't know what my level of learning is that I want to reach. So there has to be, we have to talk to each other. So we're going to kind of share some tips that made us successful in getting that message across. When I first started our relationship with these guys, I had to get them smart on these three topics. So the very first thing that we started with was a full-range leadership model, which those of you who have studied leadership, this is tied to Burns and Bass and Avolio, Sozak and Young, those kind of guys. Transactional, transformational leadership. And so I had to get these guys smart on that topic, or we really couldn't move on. Because some of the scenarios we wanted to show, I wanted to depict, inspirational motivation or contingent reward, and they wouldn't know what I was talking about. So I sent them lesson plans that we actually sent our students. We actually had some sessions together so they could clear up the differences between the behaviors. So I got these guys just as smart as my students would be at the end before we even started. So that was kind of a smart move on. We were just discussing that earlier, so that they were comfortable with the language. As I said, these are the three topics that we chose for these multiplayer educational role-playing games: full-range leadership, team building, which is really big at SOS, and cultural immersion, which we're starting to get into. We're building a synthetic culture right now where our students can get some awareness. The full-range leadership model, how do I do that? How do I turn a leadership model into a 3D environment? Well, the best way, as I'm looking at behaviors, and I'm looking at transformational leaders and transactional leaders as a teacher, as an educator, I think of people or battles or speeches, and that's what we did. We started using icons. The MacArthur speech, for instance. Where else can you go in a classroom, sit down with the cadets at West Point in 1962 and listen to a bot of General MacArthur come out and give his duty, honor, country speech? You can't really do that in a traditional classroom. We were able to do that here. We just teleported them to West Point. We had a table reserved for them in the middle with all the cadets. And we just rezzed the bot and broke out the speech. And the speech was long and slow, if you've ever heard it. We got permission to use the actual audio. And we broke it into sections, teaching sections. Because I think it was 20 minutes total. It's pretty long. But that enabled me as the facilitator to stop at certain metaphors and certain sections and get that teaching moment. Because that's really what it's all about, is making it relevant. You know, we said it could be fun, it could be cool, but if it's not relevant, the government's not going to give us any money for that. You know, I have to sell it to my bosses too. It's got to be relevant. The Battle Marathon was another one. George Washington, we found a letter in our research to his generals that I used to show individual consideration. And of course we used General Patton's Third Army speech. You remember that one. The hardest part was taking out all the expletives. And then Susan B. Anthony's plea to the court, the Battle of Agincourt. We keep changing Gandhi around, but we have stations right now of Gandhi history, and then it actually started out with Prime Minister Nehru reading his eulogy, and we just keep playing with that one. But and then the Rabin peace talks there at the White House. What do I do with these things? They're not all bots. Some of them are labs where they get note cards and they interact with some bots. They have tasks to do. You have to keep them busy, but they're engaged. That's our main thing. From a designing standpoint, we want to produce things that you can't do in a traditional classroom. And if we can do that and they can get something out of it, especially something that I tie to my curriculum, then we win. Team building was the most fun we had. Those of you familiar with SOS, we have what's called Project X, and it's 22 tasks. You've been there, huh? Have you been through it?
I went to the Squadron Officer College in 1980.
Oh, well, you still remember Project X, so it must have made an impression. Project X is 22 physical tasks. Basically all set up in this column, these walls with cubicles, and nothing fancy. They're just like little obstacles to teach team building that the students have to get through in 15 minutes. And they don't do all 22 that day. We usually split them up. But it's very rudimentary. There's puddles, and there's ladders, and there's walls to climb, and there's rope, and just, that's it. You know, we kind of make it difficult for them. And when we had the opportunity, I thought, why not bring some of those to life? And you probably recognize some of these titles. We selected these 8 Project X tasks and brought them to life. So when you're crossing a makeshift minefield, we actually have a minefield. When you're talking about UAVs and mines going off, and we can do that. We can, you know, the sky's the limit. In fact, we didn't even have to stay in this world. We did some pretty weird stuff in some of these, and the students seemed to like it. So, in fact, we're going to demo one of them tomorrow at, what time, 3 o'clock? 3 o'clock. I think in Bon Air, 3 and 4. Moving along. Cultural immersion, this is the one that still needs some work. We keep changing our direction on this because we're such a great brainstorming group that I'll get an idea and they'll build on it, and then they'll give me a new idea and I'll build on that, and it just keeps going. So we almost have to stop ourselves before we miss our deadlines. Here's just a few student comments I wanted to share with you from the last few classes. We have a class right now, our SOS classes in residence run about 850 students. So obviously I can't test all these with them. What I do each class, we offer electives, and I offer a Second Life elective to test these MPERGs. And what happens is I get about 12 to 15 students each class, and we'll do an orientation, and then we'll try a few of these MPERGs out on them and get some real feedback from real students. So it's really a formative evaluation, a live formative evaluation process. And as you can see by some of the notes here, they like the fact that they can, you know, do some virtual type experience, meeting some of these historical icons that they have never really read about. And we supply them with tons of note cards and all kinds of artifacts. You know, they can get gifts like MacArthur's pipe and his hat And they get crazy and they start putting them on during class and stuff, which is okay because they're getting in the spirit. And but in the long run, they're engaged, and that's kind of my job, is to get them engaged. And if they're kidding around and asking about it, and wearing the sword, then that's a good thing. Then we win. So it can be fun, but again, it has to be relevant. Challenges. We've kind of got rid of some of these challenges. There was some Second Life accounts problem. By the way, Second Life is our starting point platform, but at the same time on this contract we built in that we were transitioning into Unity. So at the same time we were building Second Life, H2IT was transitioning the resources into Unity. So most of these I'm talking about here are already in Unity. So we wanted more control there, and we wanted much better resolution, and there's just a lot more advantages to that. The accounts in the new avatar issues with students, it was taking up a lot of class time while we were running some of these facilitated lessons. So what we did there was I just added an orientation class where I had them face-to-face in a computer lab, and we just let them make their mistakes and asked all their questions for those 2 hours, solved all those problems. So that one went away. We can't stop the variety of personal computer systems, though. Most of them come with their own device. We push this bring your own device program for the 8 weeks.